Welcome to the Carriker Chronicles, the People Show. Checking the pulse of Husker Nation, brought to you by DPS Concrete Construction. Ladies and gentlemen, check them out at dpsconstruction.net. Also, CarrikerChronicles.com. It's just science, ladies and gentlemen. It's where all your Husker sports hopes and dreams will come true. All right, you want to know how I'm in the freaking holiday spirit? I don't like wearing long sleeves. I don't like wearing things that make me hot because I'm large. I get hot. I sweat a lot. Yet here I am in the holiday spirit. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we got a loaded show for, I even told my wife, Angie, I'm like, today's show is loaded. Like, things just kept accumulating throughout the week. Boom, we're going to drop them all here today. Nebraska's recent transfer portal commits, who they're going after, how our class is looking so far, how we compare to other schools, how is the NIL. Also, Nebraska's coaching staff. We've known Addison Williams was going to be the secondaries coach and Terry Braden was going to be the D-line coach. They're officially on staff and they can start working with the players right now in bowl prep. Okay, and if you're excited to see these guys get a head start working with the players for next year, Dana Holgorsen working on his offense for next year. I know he's currently using Nebraska's terminology from this past season, at least through the bowl game, but he can start working with Jacory and Dylan and all these other guys. And if you're excited to see what that looks like in the bowl game and going forward, then smash the like button. But here's the other thing I'm going to start it out with. And I was sent this question on Facebook. I check YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, the gram of Insta. What else am I on? X. I check the comments. I respond from time to time, but I am definitely checking the comments, and I am pretty interactive, I might add. But I thought this was interesting. Scott hit me up, said I feel better about the overall coaching now than I did 1 year ago. I was like, interesting. Tony White and others are big losses, but with improvement on the offensive side of the ball, I think we're better off as a whole. Like, he's talking about the coaching staff. And I was like, man, that's an interesting perspective. So I dove into that just a smidge. Now, real quick, if you haven't done so yet, make sure you subscribe, all right, and ring that notification bell. On Monday, I'm going to drop another show. I know for sure there could be 14 million gut reactions between now and then or after that show. I don't know. So make sure you don't miss any of that content. But I'm going to start looking ahead to the bowl game and a bunch of other things as well I've got in the back of my mind. So stay tuned for that. But you look at Nebraska's coaching staff right now. Now, it used to be you can only have 10 assistant coaches in college football. They changed that rule last June. It's unlimited now. So the way I see it at the moment, we have 13, okay, and Corey Campbell would be 14, the strength and conditioning coach, who's just as important as anyone else, by the way. But 13 assistant football coaches. All right, associate head coach Phil Snow, Dana Holgorsen, John Butler, Ed Foley, EJ Barthel. Okay, the list goes on and on. 6 on offense, 5 on defense, 1 special teams, Ed Foley. I'll address him here in just a minute. Now, if you look at the staff, there's 4 former defensive coordinators, and I pointed this out before, on this staff. From John Butler to Phil Snow to Matt Rule to Addison Williams. So that's a lot of experience. How's that going to mesh? You look at the offensive side of the ball. We still have 4 former offensive coordinators on the offensive side of the ball. I'm curious, how do you fans feel about that? Is that a lot of experience and here we go, or is this too many cooks in the kitchen? I kind of feel better about it than I don't. I really do. Because as long as there's a clear chain of command, like Dana's got the offense, and I believe Matt Rule's like, hey, John Butler's in charge of the defense and Phil Snow's going to be helping out Matt, also a second pair of eyes for the defense. But as long as there's a clear chain of command, it can be a good thing. On offense, keep in mind, Matt Rule's a former offensive coordinator. Obviously, Dana Holgorsen, Marcus Satterfield, Glenn Thomas, all these guys. So we got all sorts of experience. We got 13 different assistant coaches, 6 on offense, 5 on defense, 1 on the special teams. Now, real quick, I said when Addison Williams was rumored to be hired, when he is officially hired, I will talk about him more. So here's just a couple of brief things about our new secondaries coach. Also, shout out to Terry Braden, who's officially the new D-line coach as well. Phil Snow, as I mentioned, associate head coach. Now, he's been a defensive coordinator twice in his career, Addison Williams. Now, at UCF, they were the number 1 pass defense in the Big 12. That conference throws the ball. They don't run it great. They don't play a lot of defense, but they throw the ball. All right. In 2023, UCF's defense only allowed 12 passing touchdowns on the entire year, which was the fewest since 2001. In 2022, their defense ranked 5th nationally in red zone defense, which is something we got to get better at, something that Matt Rule has addressed specifically. And in Williams' first season at UCF, they ranked 7th nationally in pass efficiency defense, which was up 97 spots from the year before he arrived on campus for the Knights. Now, I do agree, Tony White, Terrence Knight, and their big losses, but I love guys like Phil Simpson, Addison Williams. They're great hires. Terry Braden, who ironically is a former quarterback if you go back through his career, but 8 years with the Chiefs, 4 years with the defensive line, won 3 Super Bowls. Lots of coaches on this staff have NFL experience. Now, players love that. When you're trying to bring in high school players, you're trying to bring in transfer portal guys, almost everyone wants to go to the next level. That's their main goal. 19 times out of 20, 95% of the time, hey, this guy coached 20 years. This guy coached X amount of years in the NFL. This is what we're doing here. It's going to get you ready. Players love that. He's also brought in a lot of guys that are very good recruiters, from Simpson to Williams, to a lot of these other guys who are very good recruiters. Our defense can get better this next year, but doesn't have to. And now, obviously, if our defense is better next year, I'm going to love that. But it doesn't even have to do that. Can it just play relatively the same? I'd love if our pass defense was slightly to a whole lot better. But when you think about the pass coverages, that's where we had some issues last year. And Matt Rule talked in his press conference. You just got the feeling like they were not in the same, I know for a fact they weren't on the same page in that defensive meeting room last year. There was button heads. There was guys who wanted to run one coverage or a different coverage. There was conflict. They weren't on the same page. And Matt Rule even said, we want to do these things in the future going forward. So the feeling that I strongly get and am aware of is that the feeling in that defensive meeting room is much more guys being on a cohesive, similar to same page than there was a year ago. And honestly, that's more important. Okay, the sum of all the parts matters more than the individual parts and how good they are individually. Because together, you got to come together, whether it's a player on a team or a coach on a coaching staff. All right, I believe they're going to be more on the same page next year. So maybe our defense is better next year. Now, we got a lot of younger players, a lot of talented guys, but a lot of younger players, a relatively newer staff as far as being able to gel and know each other. I think Rule didn't go for the splashy hire because he flat out said it. And I've had conversations with him where he looked me in the eye. He said, Adam, sometimes you just got to have the guts to do what you believe is best, whether it's popular or not. And he flat out said in one of his press conferences, hey, I didn't go for the splashy hire. He made good hires and hires that he believes in, and that's what matters the most, ladies and gentlemen. Now, the biggest question on this defense, ironically, with all due respect to John Butler, who has as good a resume as anybody, any coach on this entire frickin' team, offense or defense, maybe outside of Dana Holgorsen as the OC. But the biggest question is John Butler, simply because the secondary struggled last year. And yes, I've heard a million reasons as to why or why not or whatever the case may be. He's got the resume. He's got the experience. It didn't go great last year with the secondary. I think had it gone differently last year, Husker fans would frickin' love all these defensive hires. And obviously, you never want to lose guys like Tony White, Terrence Knight, and I wish them all the best down in Tallahassee. But there's reason for legit optimism as far as this defense being as good as it was last year and the staff potentially being on the same page and as a result being better collectively together next year. Now, like I said, maybe our defense is better, but just at least be equal to what you were last year as an overall whole. Now, I fully expect our offense to be better under Dana Holgorsen. I think most people do. We got an experienced quarterback, a very good running back, Emmett Johnson. I know Dante's gone. Okay, wish him the best. Young, talented wide receivers, Jacory Barney, Jalen Lloyd, signed a transfer wide receiver yesterday. Probably more wide receivers, or at least a wide receiver yet to come. I'm going to get into some of those guys later on. Young players like Carter Nelson, a Taysom Hill type player like Heinrich Harburg. Okay, the offensive line, to me, it's again a question mark coming into this. And I know we haven't even finished this past season, but there's so much transfer portal, signing day, bowl game. It's the in-season, off-season is a mess. So as I'm looking into the bowl game, as I'm looking into next year, the offensive line, what are they going to do next year? Again, they're a question mark. Frankly, I'm tired of saying that, if I'm being honest with you. But they have brought in, via visits to Lincoln, the number 2 offensive tackle, an all-MAC offensive tackle they've offered, and they've offered another Power 4 offensive starting tackle as well. Again, I'll get into some of those here later on in the video. I do expect our offense to be better. I believe our defense has the potential to be equal to, possibly greater than last year. Again, young, talented guys on that defensive side of the ball where the defensive coaches get on the same page. And how does Butler do? He's got the resume. I ain't questioning that. All right, special teams. Is Ed Foley back or not? This has just plain simply not been addressed. We brought in a long snapper. We brought in a punter. We brought in all these specialists. It seems to me like he's going to be back, but it hasn't been addressed. His resume, again, is very good. I have nothing but love and respect for his resume. Special teams the last 2 years has not been. The facts are what they are. Don't care about feelings. Okay, and again, the small indicators seem to be that he's going to be back, but it hasn't been addressed directly just yet. Nothing is for sure. This is a question that needs to be answered, in my humble opinion. I believe with Dana running our offense and some good hires that Rule has made, that our coaching staff absolutely can be better next year than it's even been the past couple of previous seasons. Our coaching staff may very well be better this year than last year. The question marks are, is the defensive staff going to gel? What are we doing on special teams? And is the offensive line going to play better? All right, I want to give a shout out before I get into a whole plethora of other things to our sponsors, DPS Concrete Construction. Check them out at dpsconstruction.net. They are your concrete and retaining wall experts. Ladies and gentlemen, there is nobody better. Also, Allen Capital Group. Check them out at allencapgroup.com. That's ALLENCAP group.com. They have next level solutions for next level needs. Check them out in their offices in Ogallala, Grand Island, and Omaha. That's allencapgroup.com, ladies and gentlemen. All right, here's a couple of other quick things. According to Nebraska OC Dana Holgorsen, there's been a constant at dinners and meetings with transfer portal prospects, and that constant is Dylan RAIOLA. Gary Sharp put this out. A local fourth grader has a simple Christmas wish to play catch with Dylan RAIOLA, and then the quarterback showed up at his school today. Props to Dylan RAIOLA and other student athletes and the impact they have with simple gestures. This is not even, I've talked about how Dylan's doing everything he can to prop up Nebraska football and all Husker sports and peer recruit. This is not my opinion. These are things that everybody can see. I'm just putting them in the show because it matches what I've been seeing as well. All right, oh, this is funny. Our Iowa friends reminded me RAIOLA was able to throw for 2,500 plus yards and complete 65% of his passes despite the struggles with the OC. An Iowa quarterback hasn't accomplished this feat since 1987, a year before current Huskers player Ismail Smith Flores' father arrived at Iowa. I just thought that was interesting. It'll land better if we beat Iowa next year. Nebraska quarterback Dylan RAIOLA says he was never really shopping around at the press conference earlier this week for the bowl game after the regular season for another team. Speculation about his status led RAIOLA to make a statement to affirm his commitment to the Huskers. He said, and I quote, "It was unfortunate," RAIOLA says, "that he had to do that. I'm playing quarterback at Nebraska," end quote. Sometimes when there is smoke, there is fire. I will say this, we live in a day and age where you just have to make a public statement just to let people know you're coming back to your current team. That is crazy to me. A couple other notes from the press conference. Urgency in the voice of Nebraska OC Dana Holgorsen on the subject of adding offensive linemen via the portal. This is very important. And I quote, "We need to bring some guys in," end quote, Holgorsen said. There are 2 O-line visitors on campus right now. This was as of a couple of days ago. He says Holgorsen hopes to add those players and reassess. At running back, Nebraska will be without Dante Dowdell next week in New York. He's in the transfer portal. In his place, according to Dana Holgorsen, redshirt freshman Quentin Ives is, and I quote, "going to go in there and play his tail off," end quote. Ives has had 9 spectacular practices this month, Holgorsen said. By the way, keep an eye out for Dowdell possibly going to Michigan. All right, Dana Holgorsen says that tight end Thomas Fedoni has had an excellent December in bowl practices. Nebraska is strong at tight end with the addition of Heinrich Harburg. I still am thinking and hoping they use him like a Taysom Hill type player in our offense. And I quote, "We're not turning this into an air raid 4 wideout program," end quote, the OC says. So those tight ends are important. All right, Nebraska DC John Butler on navigating the transfer portal this month. And I quote, "People say it's like the NFL free agency. It's not, ladies and gentlemen. This is insanity." All right, anyway, here's the rest of his quote. "No, it's not. NFL's free agency is regulated." He phrased it better than I did, end quote. Butler spent 10 seasons as a coach in the NFL before joining the Huskers last summer. All right, Nebraska DC John Butler said the new associate head coach Phil Snow will have a, and I quote, "second set of eyes from a global perspective for the defense," end quote. Nebraska's DC Dana Holgorsen had another thought, says Boston College's front seven is experienced, old, and deep, compares it to Iowa's defense. Oh, I thought this was interesting via Steve Sipple. Dannon on the radio earlier this week, Nebraska AD says game in Arrowhead is a win-win-win-win-win all the way around for us. Think about it. We're supposed to have an away game. Now it's a neutral site game. And the game in Indianapolis, where it was going to be played versus Cincinnati to start the season, was much closer to their home field. Arrowhead's much closer to our home field. We're going to have the home field advantage, and we were supposed to have an away game. How could we not love it? All right, ladies and gentlemen, what do I got next? All right, transfer portal updates, the amount of total players in the transfer portal per team in the Big Ten. You just kind of go through the transfer portal as this. Right now, Texas Tech is the top-ranked transfer portal class, and we've lost a player or two to them. Not just us, apparently. Ole Miss, always up there. Number 2, LSU. Number 3, I guess Brian Kelly can attract players with money. All right, at number 7 and 8, via the highest-ranked transfer portal classes, is Wisconsin and Minnesota. Row that boat. Go Lou Fickle. All right, 9 and 10, UCLA, Oregon, a couple of more Big Ten teams. Colorado is only at 14. I'm curious to see what happens at Colorado without Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders. Genuinely curious. At number 30 is Iowa State. Right behind Iowa State is Nebraska. We have 6 current commits. Let's go through them. All right, as of yesterday, wide receiver Isaiah Hunter. Nebraska added its first offensive player through the transfer portal. Hunter redshirted his first season for Cal before having a stellar 2024 campaign. The 6'2" speedster. He's got some good speed, ladies and gentlemen. Total 40 receptions for 578 yards and 5 TDs, leading Cal in all 3 of those receiving categories. The former 4-star recruit enters Lincoln and still has 3 years of eligibility left. All right, we also added defensive lineman Gabe Moore, who was a top 100 defensive lineman in the country coming out of high school. He redshirted, then he had an injury year, so he's still got 4 years left to play. 6'4", 290 pounds. All right, his senior year of high school. These stats for 1 year are pretty crazy. 39 TFLs, 116 tackles for a D lineman. All right, 12 sacks, 5 forced fumbles. Hopefully we can get more out of him sooner rather than later. All right, punter. With Bushini gone, we needed someone to step up. Jack McAllister. All right, Kevin's long lost brother. That joke never gets old to me. The second special teams addition Nebraska made through the portal. I'll get to the first one here in a second. He booted a 56-yarder in the national championship game versus Michigan a couple of years ago. All right, he also had 12 punts within the 20-yard line of the opponent and averaged 44 yards per punt. He was a 3-year starter for the Huskies. Next up, defensive lineman Jalen George. All right, he enters Lincoln with 2 years of eligibility remaining, earned first team All-Southern Conference honors this past season with the Buccaneers, recording 33 tackles, 6 tackles for loss, and half a sack. All right, long snapper Kevin Golick. My God, did we need a long snapper. Thank you for coming, Kevin. All right, he will have 1 year of eligibility remaining after appearing in 36 games at the FCS level. Here in FCS midseason first-team All-American honors in 2024 is regarded as one of the best long snappers in the country. And our third defensive lineman, Williams and Ware. Real quick, all right, he was a 5-star prospect coming out of high school, the number 7 recruit in the entire country, 2024. We all know that. 4 years of eligibility left. And again, 3 defensive linemen / edge rushers so far out of the 6 current transfer portal commits. Who are some of the folks we're still looking at? The number 2 portal player and number 1 edge rusher, FSU, former Florida State player Patrick Payton. He was committed to Nebraska. Coming out of high school, he's got direct ties. He knows Simpson, the outside linebackers coach. I feel like the odds are in our favor. Think about him and Williams and Ware and him coming off the edge potentially. A lot of talent, at least, there, okay? And as I mentioned, and I'm just going to go through this kind of quickly, but we've also brought in the number 2 offensive tackle in the entire portal, an all-MAC offensive tackle we have offered as well. I've talked about some of these guys in the past. All right, also another offensive tackle, Keegan Trost. All right, Power 4 starting offensive tackle because the ACC is still a Power 4 team, I guess. But he started at Wake Forest. All right, so this is a guy with starting experience out of Power 4 conference, technically. Kentucky wide receiver Dane Key. I've talked about him 4 billion times. Nebraska has made him a priority target, just like Hunter, the guy we signed yesterday. It's really down to Nebraska and another SEC school or two. I know Georgia's in the mix. I know Ole Miss was in the mix for a bit. They brought in a bunch of wide receivers. If we get Dane Key, that'd be pretty awesome. We lost out on the Florida International receiver, but if we could get Dane along with Hunter, that'd be pretty freaking good. Former Idaho DB, highly sought after. Andrew Marshall visited as well. Former Georgia Bulldog, Sam Mpemba, very talented. A boomer bust type player. Someone that Matt Rule could potentially develop into a big-time player, but he's a lot of talent, but boomer bust. We'll see what happens there and who he goes to. A lot of other players as well. Just keep an eye on everything as everything unfolds in the future. Couple of bowl game notes. Isaiah Nayor and Micah Mizuka will not be part of the bowl roster. Nayor has opted out to prepare for the draft while Mizuka had shoulder surgery. A little bit of Nebraska volleyball. And I thought this was interesting from Kevin Stutes because I thought the same thing. I really did. In my opinion, the 2024 Nebraska volleyball team is one of the program's all-time best, perhaps the best not to win a national title. 2007 comes to mind as well. 2024 played at a championship level nearly the entire year. So many times I left Devaney thinking they'd be hosting the trophy. And I agree with a lot of what he just said right there. Here's another transfer portal update. Huskers offered former Oregon/UCLA DB transfer Jalen Davis. He was a former 4-star out of high school, top 10 DB in the 2021 class. He has had 108 tackles, 11 PBUs, 4 INTs, 1 forced fumble, half a sack, and 105 yards in 40 career games. So keep an eye out for him. Now, more on volleyball. Lexi Rodriguez, as I'm sure you saw, set the all-time digs career record for Nebraska, 1,891. I'm sure she finished with more. I don't know the final total, but that was the number to break the record. So shout out to her. You know, every single team in the Final Four had some sort of Nebraska connection. Just think about Penn State. Caroline Juravicius, who's, by the way, her dad, he lives in Lincoln. Joe Juravicius played on that 94 Penn State team that went undefeated. Number 2 in the country to number 1 Nebraska. But his daughter was on Nebraska's team, goes to Penn State, and I'll be honest with you, she had a big impact on the match last night. But there's former Husker connections everywhere in this current Final Four. And one person I want to give a specific shout out to, I mean, we basically came in together. She went to volleyball. Her husband, Lane Kelly, was a long snapper for the Huskers. He walked on. We came in together. All right, that's why it's Danny Bus Boom Kelly. So just for those who aren't aware, all right, she was a national title winner in 2006, co-libero of the year also in the Big 12 Conference, an assistant coach for John Cook and the Huskers as well. She's from Cortland, Nebraska. 3-time ACC Coach of the Year, a National Coach of the Year. She's taken Louisville to the Final Four 3 of the past 4 seasons and the National Championship match 2 of the past 3 seasons. I'll be rooting for Louisville, even though Penn State's from the Big Ten. I'm going to be rooting for Louisville on Sunday versus Penn State. This is a cool picture. Husker fans are truly the best. The picture is worth 1,000 words. All right, as far as the match itself, not the way anyone wanted it to go. All right, This is the first time Nebraska's been reverse swept since 1982 versus Purdue. It's the first time Penn State had done it to anybody since 2009 in the national championship match versus Texas. We had 2 match points in set 4. Could have closed it out. Obviously didn't happen. Nobody wants it to go that way. Penn State has 7 national championships. All right, more than any program in the country. And they're playing for their first national championship in 10 years on Sunday. That was the 6th reverse sweep in Final Four history. The 6th team to do it, I should say. Now, I do want to give a shout out to Schumacher Cauley. Prayers for your continued battle with cancer, something she refused to let affect Penn State's championship bid. She is Penn State's head coach, so it's hard not to root for Penn State here too. Whoever wins on Sunday, much love and respect. It's hard not to root for everybody involved. And she has the chance to become the first woman to win an NCAA Division I championship as a head coach. Much respect to John Cook, who has 4 national titles, 12 Final Fours, 15 conference titles, multiple Coach of the Year awards, and an .876 winning percentage. The best winning percentage of any active coach in America. Now, when you think about the NBA, I saw that their viewership was down 19%, but then I looked somewhere else and it said like 40. I don't know. I wasn't interested enough to get confirmation, but it's severely down. Volleyball's setting records. All right, Nebraska's regional final against Wisconsin on ABC had attracted an average viewership of 798,000, the most for a regional. All right, the 2024 NCAA Volleyball Regionals were the most watched on record, 401,000 average viewers, up 98% year over year, included the 5 most watched regional matches ever. And the viewership was up 44% from a year ago. All right, just pretty cool to see volleyball growing. Oh, I apologize for the bad screenshot, but I was just randomly on my laptop, saw this on YouTube. This family, Husker volleyball fan, I should say, bought tickets to the Final Four almost a year ago. You talk about expectations and belief. Love it. All right. I thought this was cool. Former Husker Allie Battenhorst, who transferred to USC, drafted by the Omaha Supernovas, is now back. She said, this is before the match, she goes, "I want them to win so bad," end quote. I just thought that was really cool. Again, another random transfer portal update. Sorry for the randomness of this. All right, but this was as I was wrapping up prep for the show. This popped up. Former Ohio State LSU cornerback Jair Brown will be visiting the Huskers, a former 4-star top 20 cornerback in the 2022 class. All right, so we'll see what happens there. Ty Robinson, my favorite player on Nebraska's current team. Again, these aren't my children. I can have favorites. It's okay. Nebraska's Ty Robinson, after 6 years and 46 career starts, will play in a bowl game for the first time next week, and I quote, "to be able to represent the N one more time in Yankee Stadium. I'm blessed. I'm honored. It's such a privilege to play for this place." I love this dude. This was awesome. I'm a WWE fan, as you know. WWE has signed the University of Nebraska's track and field star Megan Walker to NXT as of yesterday. So this came out a few days ago. But again, it's been a few days since I've done a show. She is set to start her training at the Performance Center. Good luck to her. And this is a fun fact right here, ladies and gentlemen. Nebraska has a more recent bowl win than Colorado. Turner Gill plays shortstop for Nebraska. Did you know that? I didn't know that. All right. And this has been confirmed. All right. There is a team in the college football playoff that is actively paying its players to stay through the playoffs so they just have enough players to practice. That's insanity to me. And prayers up for Jack Hoffman and the Hoffman family. If you haven't seen this, please pray for Jack and his family now more than ever, as his recent scan showed multiple new tumor locations. For the latest update on Jack, visit what's on your screen. Thoughts and prayers to Jack, his family. Oh, Skip Bayless. I don't know what you think of Skip, but I thought this was asinine. All right. Was Coach Prime snubbed for Coach of the Year? Skip Bayless. How do you snub Coach Prime on a season that no other coach could have had or accomplished with his team? I don't know. Maybe because Kurt Signetti won Coach of the Year because he took Indiana from 3-9 to 11-1. They had more total wins this year, the Hoosiers did, than the past 3 years combined. More Big Ten Conference wins this year than they did the past 3 years combined. If you want to argue the Coach of the Year the past 2 years, where Colorado went from 1-11 2 years ago to on the verge of winning a conference title in the college football playoff, that's a different conversation I'll listen to. But I'll tell you right now, I don't think he was snubbed in any way, shape, or form. Think about this. When it comes to Nebraska volleyball, they have 4 All-Americans. By the way, good luck to Lexi Rodriguez. She's one of the 4 finalists for the National Player of the Year, the first ever libero ever named the AVCA Regional Player of the Year. She's also up for National Player of the Year. But of the 4 All-Americans on Nebraska's volleyball team, Andy Jackson, Lexi Rodriguez, all right, Harper Murray, and Bergen Riley, 3 of them are sophomores. Nebraska will be back. Here are my quick predictions for the college football playoff. Notre Dame over Indiana, Texas over Clemson, Penn Penn State over SMU, Ohio State over Tennessee. But I got some upsets in the next round. Boise over Penn State. Georgia's got a backup quarterback. Arizona State's got 12 players in the transfer portal. Maybe Ohio State over Oregon in the rematch. Ohio State plays differently after they lose to Michigan and any team that's not Michigan. Check out the website, CarrikerChronicles.com. Follow me on X, follow me on TikTok, follow me on Facebook. And here are my 3 questions for you fine folks at home. Let me know your answer in the comments below. Number 1, did Deion Sanders, was he screwed in the Coach of the Year voting? Or should Kurt Cignetti have won it? Or even Kenny Dillingham, Kurt Cignetti did win it, or Kenny Dillingham, who was 34 years old and Arizona State was picked preseason to finish 16th in the Big 12 and won the conference title. Number 2, do you feel better or worse about Nebraska's NIL and transfer portal class right now this week than you did this time last week? Yes or no? Let me know. Last but certainly not least, do you think Nebraska's coaching staff will be better this year than it was last year? Until next time, go Big Red, and always remember to throw the ball.